Right now, your feet are probably in pain. Not screaming pain, just that low-level ache you've stopped noticing. Because it's been there so long, it's become part of the floor plan. The tight squeeze after a long day. The heel that complains on the first few steps every morning. The toe that bends at a slightly wrong angle, and has been doing it for years. About 75% of Americans will experience a significant foot problem in their lives. 1 in 3 adults already has a bunion. Over 2 million seek treatment for plantar fasciitis every year. Women have 4 times as many foot problems as men. We treat this like it's just aging, like bad feet are just what happens. But here's what nobody tells you. For millions of people, this is not the price of aging. It is the result of a modern environment the human foot was never designed for. It's something we did to ourselves, accidentally, about 200 years ago. The foot we damaged was, until that moment, one of the most extraordinary biomechanical structures ever produced by evolution. 4 million years in the making, capable of carrying a human body over 100,000 miles in a lifetime without wearing out. The thing that damaged it was not too much running, not too much walking, not age, not weakness, not bad luck. It was the modern shoe. Part 1. The machine you're standing on. To understand what the shoe did, you first need to understand what it was working against. The human foot contains 26 bones, 33 joints, 107 ligaments, 19 muscles. It is not a platform. It is a dynamic, load-distributing system that adjusts in real time to every surface it touches. When you step on a rock, the foot doesn't just absorb the impact. It reads the surface through thousands of sensory receptors, redistributes that force across all 26 bones, shifts your posture from the ankle upward in milliseconds, without you thinking about it, thousands of times per day. The arch is the engineering marvel at the center of this. Not a static curve, a spring. Every time your foot hits the ground, the arch compresses, stores energy, and releases it back into your next step. A propulsion mechanism you never have to charge. The Achilles tendon works alongside it, stretching under load, recoiling like a cable under tension, returning energy with every step. Together, they make human walking more efficient than any robotic locomotion system engineers have managed to replicate, despite decades of trying. And then there's the big toe. When you push off at the end of a stride, roughly 40% of your body weight transfers through the joint at its base. It's a lever, a launch point, a balance anchor, all at once. When it points straight forward, aligned with the heel, the whole system works. Force travels cleanly through the joint. The arch springs, the Achilles recoils, and you move forward with almost no wasted energy. Every component was designed for one purpose, covering large distances across varied, unpredictable natural terrain. The damage, when it came, didn't look like damage, it looked like progress. Part 2. 4 million years without shoes. The oldest human footprints ever found were pressed into volcanic ash in Laetoli, Tanzania. They are 3.66 million years old. 2 individuals, walking upright, side by side. When researchers studied that shape, the pressure distribution, the arch impression, the toe alignment, they found something that stopped them. It was nearly identical to what a barefoot modern human leaves in wet sand today. The human foot has been essentially the same for almost 4 million years. For almost all of that time, it ran barefoot, at most a flat sandal of animal hide or a simple fiber wrapping. The oldest confirmed sandals, from a cave in Oregon, are 10,400 years old, a fraction of the full story. Before those, bare contact with varied ground was the default. Rock, dirt, grass, sand, uneven surfaces. Every step forced the small muscles across the sole to fire, the joints to micro-adjust, the toes to spread and grip. The foot wasn't resting, it was working. Daniel Lieberman, professor of human evolutionary biology at Harvard, made this concrete. He compared runners who had grown up barefoot with runners who had always worn shoes. The barefoot runners landed on the midfoot or forefoot. Impact spread across the whole foot. Ankle compliant, almost no collision force. The shod runners landed on their heels. And a heel strike on a hard surface sends a force of up to 3 times body weight crashing up through the heel bone into the ankle, knee, hip, and spine. About 1,000 times per mile. The barefoot runners were moving the way the foot was designed to move. The shod runners were moving the way their shoes had trained them. Those are not the same thing. The damage hadn't started yet. It began the moment shoes stopped being protection and became a mold. Part 3. When everything changed. In the 19th century, two things changed. Neither was designed to hurt anyone. First, industrial manufacturing. Suddenly, shoes could be mass-produced at low cost. Before this, every shoe was made by hand, fitted to an individual foot. After this, they were made in fixed sizes, on a rigid form called a last, and sold at scale. The individual variation of every human foot was forced into a standardized shape. Second, the heel. Here's what a raised heel does to the body. Weight shifts forward onto the ball of the foot. The calf muscles shorten to compensate. The Achilles tendon, built to stretch and release, is locked short. The lower back overextends to keep you upright. The knees absorb load they were never designed for. And the toes, meant to spread wide at push-off, are crammed into the narrowed front of a shoe shaped by fashion, not biology. Raised heels had existed before. Persian cavalry wore them for grip in stirrups. European fashion adopted them in the 1600s. But as mass production scaled up, the raised heel became the default. Not for any biomechanical reason, not because anyone had tested it, simply because it was the shape being made at volume, and once it was standard, everyone wore it. Men, women, workers, soldiers, children. This happened slowly. No single shoe catastrophic on its own, but the body was paying attention. And what it did next took years to become visible. Part 4. What the body did next. Here's what the body does when you ask it to function wrong, consistently, for years. It doesn't fight it. It conforms. The big toe, pushed sideways day after day, drifts toward the second toe. The joint at its base, the push-off lever the entire stride depends on, develops a bony protrusion as it tries to absorb the force. This is a bunion. While genetics can influence susceptibility, the primary driver in most cases is mechanical. Years of pressure pushing the toe somewhere it was never meant to go. A third of American adults have one. In populations that have never worn constraining footwear, they are almost non-existent. The tendons of the smaller toes, compressed from above, begin to contract. The joint curls. Eventually, it stays curled. This is a hammer toe, a flexibility problem that becomes, over time, a permanent deformity. The plantar fascia, the thick band of connective tissue running along the bottom of the foot, central to the arch's spring action, is strained by the altered mechanics a raised heel creates. It becomes inflamed. Every morning, when you take your first steps after the tissue has cooled and tightened overnight, it hurts. This is plantar fasciitis, the most common cause of heel pain in the world. And then there's the arch. In a foot that spends its life in a cushioned shoe with built-in support doing the arch's job, the muscles that power it gradually weaken. Not from overuse, from being replaced. 25% of Americans now have partially or fully collapsed arches. A species that walked 100,000 miles per lifetime for 4 million years is physically deforming inside the devices designed to protect it. The worst of it isn't happening to adults. Part 5. The smoking gun. The clearest evidence is the simplest. Look at who doesn't have these problems. Researchers studying populations where barefoot walking is still common find the same pattern everywhere. Wider feet, stronger arches, more even pressure across the sole, and dramatically lower rates of bunions, hammer toes, and plantar fasciitis. The conditions endemic to Western populations are nearly absent in populations that don't wear shoes. When children in those same populations begin wearing shoes, particularly those with narrow toe boxes and raised heels, foot problems appear within years. Not because of who they are, because of what they're wearing. In 1992, a study examined 2,300 children in India. The children who had never worn shoes had significantly healthier feet than those who had. The worst outcomes belonged to children in closed-toe shoes. This wasn't fringe research. It appeared in the Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery, more than 30 years ago. The window when the foot's intrinsic muscles develop is early childhood, and they only strengthen through use. Put a stiff shoe on a toddler, and you partially close that window. The muscles never fully develop. The arch never loads the way it was meant to. The foundation is quietly compromised before the child is old enough to understand what a shoe is. Your foot still thinks it lives on dirt, rock, and uneven ground. Its sensory systems, its muscles, its entire architecture were calibrated for surfaces that no longer exist in most people's daily lives. For most of its life now, it has lived inside a rigid mold standardized by industrial production. Designed around your foot? No. Designed for efficiency of scale, and the industry kept growing. Part 6. The irony that should stop you. The modern athletic shoe, cushioned, arch-supported, heel elevated, was invented in the 1970s as a solution to running injuries. The logic seemed sound. Feet hurt, so cushion them. Support the arch so it doesn't have to work so hard. Protect the heel from impact. Running injuries increased, not because people ran more, because the shoe changed how people ran. The cushioned heel made heel striking comfortable, so people did it constantly. And a heel strike, as Lieberman's research confirmed, sends 3 times body weight through a joint that was almost never the first point of contact with the ground. The shoe built to protect the foot was training it to move in exactly the way that caused the damage. The arch support follows the same logic. For people with existing injuries or structural conditions, targeted support can be genuinely necessary. That's real medicine for real problems. But for a healthy foot, placed in a shoe that has taken over the arch's job, it grows progressively weaker. Not from injury, from never being asked to perform. A muscle that is never used atrophies, quietly, over years, until the day you notice the arch isn't there anymore. This does not mean every shoe is dangerous. Some people have structural conditions that genuinely require support. Some environments demand protection. Footwear is not the villain. The villain is permanent substitution, taking over a function until the body forgets how to do it. The modern foot is not failing because humans have become weak. It is failing because the environment around it changed faster than evolution can track. We built a multi-billion-dollar industry to solve a problem. The industry, in many cases, has been deepening it. The full picture 3.66 million years ago, 2 of your ancestors walked across volcanic ash in Tanzania and left prints that researchers would find, millions of years later, and recognize as nearly their own. For almost all of the time between then and now, the foot ran as it was designed to run, bare or near bare, on varied natural ground, every small muscle firing, every joint adjusting, every sensory receptor reading the surface below and making corrections in real time. Then, in the last 2 centuries, a fraction of a percent of our entire evolutionary history, we placed it inside a box. Raised heel, narrowed front, cushioning that replaced the arch's job, rigid sides that locked the toes in place. We put it on children and workers and athletes and the elderly, and wore it for 16 waking hours every day. And the foot did what biology always does. Under sustained pressure, it cannot escape. It became the shape of the box we put it in. When your feet hurt, and statistically, they already do, that is not aging. It is not the price of being human. It is the accumulated consequence of 2 centuries of well-intentioned decisions that nobody traced back to their source. The most widespread accidental act of self-sabotage in modern history, still happening, on the feet of every child stepping into their first pair of shoes.